Hello everyone and welcome! There's been a lot of talk about the new honor system and the new runes and masteries. Everyone's been explaining how these things work, but no one really questions the impact these changes will have. So today, I would like to talk about how much of a change this is, how different the next season could be, and what kind of runes and keystones would really change the game. For this video, I will use quotes and examples from Riot's video talking about the Runes and Masteries update, or as they call it,
Runes Reforged.
I highly recommend watching their video first because there they tell us what exactly they are aiming for. So, what is the goal of this update? First of all, they are merging the Runes and Masteries into a single system. This is a great quality of life change because, if you think about it, there was no reasons to have those two separated. The stats that you get from the runes could have easily been part of the mastery system. Just to give the players few more mastery points and few more tiers to put the points into. So it's great to hear that we now have to deal with only one system.
Instead of many, mostly incremental choices about stats, new runes concentrate the power down to a more focused set of choices that have a greater impact on gameplay.
As you can see, Joe even pointed out that all the small stats you gained from runes were somewhat pointless in the end. It all comes down to the fact that each champion pretty much has one best way to be played. And with that, there is one best set of runes and masteries. That's where keystones come into play. Even though the UI they showed us is work in progress, it represents roughly what we can expect. You can see that we can choose a keystone, which, as I'll show you, is a huge game changer. Then one greater rune, which also should have a big impact. And then probably 4 normal runes. I'll show you how it all works later in this video. And before we go deeper into some examples of runes, I want to point out that I had to Google what this text means. For those of you who also have no idea, the lorem ipsum is Latin frames basically used for a placeholder. Also, a funny note, the sit amid dolor phrase used under the second keystone can be translated as the pain of losing. I am not entirely sure what they are pointing at there. Joe started strongly by saying,
Keystones should feel like huge choices that you can build an entire playstyle around.
But then they showed us this.
Take Berserk for example. After you've been in combat for a few seconds, Berserk grants you a 60% attack speed boost and raises your attack speed cap momentarily.
This keystone looks like an amazing change for someone like Caitlyn, right? Playing her with this keystone will totally make you feel awesome. That is, until every Caitlyn ever uses this single keystone, because there simply can't be a better one. This issue doesn't target all the keystones, as you'll see in a sec. But the problem with this one is that this keystone is nothing but an attack speed buff. And because Caitlyn's best stat is arguably attack speed, you can't beat that. You need all your keystones to be interactive. Otherwise, one keystone will simply be better than the others and all the choices suddenly disappear. Let's look at another example so you know what I'm talking about.
Another example keystone is Perksy. Perksy is a pet that comes with special abilities. When you send her out, she gives a shield to allies or does additional damage to enemies.
This keystone doesn't just give you a bonus stat, which means that any champion can take this keystone and be useful with it. Support can take it for the shield or damage, jungler can take it for the shield or damage during ganks, mid or top can use it for damage when trading or shield when your jungler arrives. Just imagine your support taking the attack speed keystone. Riot needs to avoid raw stats, which is exactly what they've done with all the other greater and minor runes. One exception you need to keep in mind is defensive stats. Since everyone will benefit from those, anyone can pick runes with defensive stats if there is a choice. But wait, there is one more thing that may change everything. There is a line in the blog post about Runes Reforged that tell us how choosing keystones may turn out. Runes are assigned to paths, each with its own theme, identity, and set of mechanics to explore. The domination path, for example, is about hunting down and blowing up targets. Inside each path you will find a collection of choices, or slots, where you select one rune from around 3 options. This confirms the fact that there will most likely be the same kinds of trees as we have now, maybe a bit more of them. This idea clicks together with what we saw before. If you look at the screen they showed us, now that we know that the runes work in trees, it is obvious that you go from the bottom to the top of 4 tiers in each tree. You get a basic rune in the first tier, basic rune in the second tier, greater rune in the third tier, and finally a keystone in the fourth. On the right side you can see it is called secondary runes, but it is in the same rune page, which means on top of the 4 choices you have in one tree, you can choose 2 more tiers from any other tree. When I realized this, I was a bit disappointed. It looks like this new system will be exactly the same as the one we have now, but maybe with a bit more meaningful choices. I was hoping Riot would try another way of dealing with runes. For example, having 15 normal runes, 10 greater runes and 10 keystones. And you can freely combine them any way you want. That would bring insane flexibility, but it would also be a nightmare to balance. The other way I thought Riot would go was to use branching talent trees, just like Path of Exile, since you need to get the power from lost runes into the system. As I said, at this point I was a bit disappointed, but then I realized something else. Since we know there will be 4 tiers and we have 6 points to spend, will we be able to choose 2 greater runes instead of 1 keystone? If we get the choice of combining 2 game-changing runes instead of 1 massive one, suddenly the flexible choices come in again. Suddenly you think about the real support tanks being hybrids between support and tank trees. Or maybe support assassins, which could be possible since I will show you some of the examples Riot showed us. The 2 major runes they revealed are Overheal, which I am guessing will be in utility tree. This rune turns all overheals into a shield. And the second one is Zombie Wards. After destroying an enemy ward, you spawn a visible ward for your team. No doubt this will be in the support tree. There is also Overcharger rune, which gives you cooldown reduction. But if you manage to go over the cap, the cooldown reduction from this rune gets turned into ability power or attack damage. This one is from a tree focused on ability damage power, which we can see in the concept screen. They also showed us 2 tiers, so we have an idea of what our choices may look like. There is a tree called Domination, which is focused on being an assassin. You can choose between 3 runes, each will give you a stacking buff for each unique takedown on enemy champions, which means maximum of 5 stacks. You get 10 out of combat movement speed per stack, 5% active item cooldown reduction per stack, or 2% spell wamp per stack. These choices play into the assassin support way I talked about earlier. If you can play support and choose these, then you can play something like Bard and really benefit from roaming around. The other tier Riot shows us is very interesting one. It is a choice between defensive stats, which, as I told you, anyone can use, so the flexibility should be really nice. You have a choice between 1 permanent maximum health for each minion dying near you, which can be translated into roughly 300 health in the late game, 5% stronger heals and shields, 10% stronger if the target is below 40%, and 10% movement speed when moving towards CC'd allies. Since they are not purely all about defense, these 2 will probably be part of the utility tree with the Overheal rune. So what does Riot need to do in order for this system to be successful? Riot needs to make sure every choice has a weight. There shouldn't be an obvious answer, because if there is one and every champion will once again have only one way to be played, then why have the system at all? That's why I think the Berserk keystone is just out of place. Obviously majority of AD carries will pick this one because its power is just insane. The only case in which this keystone would make sense would be if the other keystones gave you even more ridiculous powers. And Riot could fix this easily by doing one of 2 things. Either make it so you only get the buff if you attack the same target. That way, if the enemy targets you, your lane partner can bully them, because if they switch targets, they lose the buff. The other way of fixing it would be by making it mark the target by 3 successful basic attacks. If you then hit the enemy with an ability, only then would you get the buff. That way, if you see the enemy marked you and you see them casting an ability, you have a chance to dodge the spell and save yourself from the inevitable doom. But that is pretty much all I have for now. The chances are Riot will probably change the system anyway. Who knows, maybe we'll get our branching choices in the end. But I don't think I have anything else on this topic. If you enjoyed this little talk, feel free to like this video and subscribe for lore. If you enjoy lore, I think I'm the guy for that. You can also follow us on social media, all the links should be below. And don't forget, we now have a Patreon as well. Thank you all so much for being here and for your support, you know I really appreciate it. And as always, thank you come again.